Let's go next to Eddie from South Bend. Is that South Bend, Indiana?
Yeah, that's right. Can you hear me all right?
I can, Eddie. What's going on?
So I have possibly your first ever multiple choice call.
Okay.
So on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being a super softball question and 5 being what many are calling the greatest indictment of the David Backman show. So what would you like on a scale of 1 to 5?
Like, in other words, you have five different questions that I can choose from?
Yeah, number 3 is more like I guess a comment, but yeah, pretty
Let's
much.
not go with that. Let's go with a 4. I'll take a tough question, but not like the toughest.
Okay, so I've been going back in your earlier videos, looking at some of your earlier opinions. Something you haven't talked about in a while is sort of representation and identity politics.
Okay.
So to some degree, there is like I would argue an importance to these sorts of things, and I have a story if you want it from that from an experiment my friend did. But in any case, I guess the question would be. To what degree would you sacrifice policy for identity in politics
What do
to
you
have
even mean by that?
representation,
I'd
let's say?
need to, what's an example of that? Can you give me an example of what it would mean to sacrifice policy for
Right.
identity?
So let's say, for instance, like the Warren versus Bernie, right? So Warren was less good on policy than Bernie, but it would be, a first woman presidential candidate. The example I have initially was a friend of mine did this experiment when she was a teacher in St. Louis, and this was during the riots down there. She had all of her students in their fourth grade class draw a scientist, and every one of them drew an older white male.
Okay.
And all the students were black, and not one of them drew a black person, and they were wondering why. And they were like, "Oh, well, we don't. That's not something I can do."
Hmm.
And they weren't aware of any black scientists. So, to what degree would you be willing to give in on some policies, if any, for the sake of giving representation to unrepresented groups?
So, I mean, my view on this really hasn't changed, which is
Mhm.
I care about policy and not identity in terms of making decisions, but I still recognize the importance of identity in our understanding of the world. And so my opposition to identity politics has been you can't use identity as a cudgel to silence people, to delegitimize voices. And so that's why I was, for example, so against when the Women's March said Jewish women weren't intersectional enough to be on the leadership. I was completely against that. I found that vile. In my analysis of the 2020 Democratic candidates, I didn't care about identity at all. I only cared about policy, etc. At the same time, there is no understating the importance and value and inspiration of, for example, we now have a female vice president for the first time. And it's the first, there's all these other I don't even know all the categories. I'm so out of the identity game that I don't even know all the categories that Kamala Harris is part of. I think is there the Native American or Asian, all these different things. Okay. There's no question that for young girls and young minority girls or all minority people, whatever, there's value in seeing that there is now an individual that checks certain boxes that for the first time is in this role. That there's no need to minimize that. What I'm against is using identity as a cudgel or as a weapon. And I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it's a complicated topic.
No, I agree. It's super complicated. I think that's about where I'm at as well. I was kind of curious because in some of the videos I had seen, it seemed you were very much so like against identity politics. But thanks for the clarification and
Yeah, I'm against
using it
identity.
as like
I'm against identity politics, but I'm in favor of recognizing the value of identity and what it brings to our conversations of things.
that makes sense. All right,
All
thanks for
right,
the
my
call.
friend. Thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it. Let's see what else here. Um, we by the way, don't use my name on our Discord server. You're gonna get banned for that. So use a real name. Don't say your name is David Packman. We don't allow that. Let's try Zach from Orlando. Zach, you're on the air. Zach from Orlando, you're on the air.
Hey, David, can you hear me?
Just barely, Zach. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my question is, as someone who considers himself pretty far left, I look at countries like Denmark or Norway, Sweden, Canada, etc., as countries that I would like the United States to kind of emulate.
Hmm.
And I have a lot of conservative family members. I'm like the only one that's even left, I guess.
Okay.
And I never hear them talk about any other country in a good way. I was wondering, are there countries that the United of conservatives praise or think are good?
I mean, you really have to ask them. But what's really, really funny is that for these kind of hardcore Christian Republicans, the countries that most match their moral values are radical Islamist countries that have, many of them want a Christian version of what many of these Muslim countries have. And so it's often what they envision as ideal is like Saudi Arabia, et cetera, even though they claim not to like those countries. And it's a very interesting contrast. But you'd really have to ask them. I don't know what countries they like. A lot of them say they like what Duterte has done and cleaning things up and whatever. We're talking about a dictator here. You'd really have to ask them. But there's some pretty serious hypocrisy there for sure.
Of course, yeah. Well, thank you very much for picking on me. I didn't think I'd get called on. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Great to speak to you. We're going to take a very, very quick break. If you're holding to talk to me, don't hang up because we're going to go right back to the phones momentarily. Stand by.